All right.
Yeah.
I know we love to talk about our Detroit teams, but there's a different story that's really been percolating my brain for the last week. That is the Pat Fitzgerald firing at
Mm-hmm.
Northwestern. Just give me the floor for a couple of minutes. I got a lot to say and a few different thoughts, so just give me a couple minutes to spit it out.
Do it.
Okay, so for those who don't know, Pat Fitzgerald, Northwestern's head coach, fired. Essentially, what came out in the reports was these hazing activities that kids would put on purge-like masks, turn the lights out in the locker room, hump whoever the underclassman was who messed up at practice that day. I am so done with hazing. How is this flat out still a thing? One, how is it ever a thing? I've never understood it. What is it supposed to be good for team building or friendship or some whatever weird frat kid who created it thought back in Ted's day in the 70s? I don't understand it. It needs to be done. With that being said, there's a few different thoughts I have on what really happened. I don't think anybody knows for sure. Did Fitzgerald know? Did he not know? Let's just act like Fitzgerald did not know. Fitzgerald didn't know. Flat out, these kids in that locker room, they're not even kids. They are my age, 22, 23, some 24 with all these COVID seasons. These upperclassmen who, mind you, just wheeled out a 1-11 season, take it upon themselves to be the weirdos who are putting kids through these weird hazing activities, man. At some point, you got to look at the kids. The coach can't see everything. They can't. These weirdo kids, man, they should be kicked off the team. I hate that the coach has to fall on the sword for all these situations. Yes, he's been this kind of culture king. He's always standing on this, moral high ground that Northwestern has this incredible culture. And this would be a clear, opposite of that. And so I understand why people would say the coach has to know about it. Coach knows everything. College coaches, nothing. There's nothing that goes on in these programs they don't know about. Flat out, dude. At some point, you got to blame the players.
Yeah.
I don't care if the coach maybe did know about it. At some point, these kids in that locker room, these 80 college kids in this locker room, underclassmen, upperclassmen, redshirt freshmen, seniors, super seniors, you see this going on. How do you just idly stand by and let it happen? You let stuff get written on dry erase boards about it. You flat out let these weirdos on your team. And here's the best part about it. Like I said, they suck. 1-11. Not like they're Alabama, first round picks. Like, yeah, maybe a little bit tougher for the underclassmen to go and say something to these guys who are, going to be playing for the Detroit Lions next year. These are scrub-a-dubs, and they showed in their record, and it showed in the locker room, and it showed in the culture. And that's why your head coach, who is almost universally beloved by all the fan base, all the alums, all the players, there's a reason he kept his job after a 1-11 season. You basically, by your actions, got him fired. So I hope that they aren't just some snot-nosed kids, which they probably are, who don't give a shit. They think they're on top of the world. They're college athletes. Nothing can touch them. I hope that the punishment should be twice as hard on those kids. They should be off the team if your coach is going to get fired for that. So I put more of the blame on these players, these men, than I do on Fitzgerald. Now, even if, let's say Fitzgerald knew about it, he should have been fired on the spot, rightfully so. I mean, not only because he's always stood on this sort of moral high ground, like I said, that Northwestern's above you, they're smart, they're like Michigan or whatever with their academics. They don't necessarily win every game, but they're going to do it the right way. That was a facade. And we know it was a facade. Looking back, a mirage, whatever word you want to use. Looking back, there's a sports psychologist who played football for Northwestern 10 years ago who said he entered therapy because of what happened to him 10 years ago at Northwestern.
Right.
So chances are this has been going on for a long, long time. Chances are Fitzgerald knew about it and just turned his nose up at it. How in God's green earth do you know that's going on in your locker room and you just let it go? If that is the case, there's probably no way to ever truly prove it. Most likely he knew. Totally the right decision to fire him. I don't care. It's not cancel culture. It's not woke culture. It's just having common sense.
Right.
Fired. So it's just this whole story. I don't know why it's old news to most of the people listening to this, but it's just, I can't stop thinking about it. How dumb it is. The outpouring of support for Fitzgerald as soon as he got fired. The fact that we haven't heard who these kids were that were the ones doing this hazing, and just flat out, why is hazing still a goddamn thing?
Yeah.
Maybe you guys can enlighten me more on this. Like, it seems like maybe Matt, your generation was more like it seems like maybe when that was at its like peak, like where it's big, like it was almost like popular thing to do almost.
Right.
Ted, your generation maybe is what started it. Obviously my generation has learned from it and they keep doing it no matter how dumb it is. And the fact, it's going to come back and bite you. I just don't understand. Where do you guys stand on this story? One, do you think Fitzgerald was the root of it? Did he know about it? Two, if you didn't, do you think that he should have been fired for it if he flat out didn't know? And then thirdly, what is hazing? Why is it still a goddamn thing?
I mean, I'm definitely with you that I've always thought hazing has no place in the locker room anywhere, whether it's an office, whether it's a sports locker room, whether it's wherever. Sure, there's a lot of stuff that you keep throwing around Ted's days, but there's a lot of stuff that maybe was more acceptable 100 years ago, 50 years ago, that now looking back is like, okay, that probably wasn't right. There's a lot of things in this culture that we've learned that we let slip back in the day that clearly we should not have. And I think hazing is definitely one of them. There's no reason for it. Maybe there can be different levels. Okay. Making the rookie on a football team go buy everyone donuts and coffee in the morning. Okay, if you want to call that hazing, I don't really see that as hazing. Maybe that's just rookie initiation or something. That stuff, okay, cool. But even like as far as I've seen people share videos where they make a rookie pay, they all go out to like steak dinners. And they make a rookie pay the $20,000 restaurant bill. I'd be like, no, I'm not paying that. This is my whole signing bonus. Like, you guys are making millions. Like, what are we talking about here? But yeah, when you talk about the hazing, like what happened, at least allegedly, at Northwestern or some of the other stuff that we found out, no, it's just not necessary. I mean, you can really mess people up psychologically for a long time with stuff like that. And it's just the wrong thing to do in this culture. As far as Pat Fitzgerald, it's a lot of strange things. It's weird to me that he got fired, but the rest of the staff got kept. Yeah. You always hear, like you laid out, you always hear that these coaches, Nick Saban, Jim Harbaugh, Kirby Smart, all these coaches, Joe Paterno, with everything that went on at Penn State, these coaches know everything. Even Bo Schembechler, the stuff that's come out about him, these head coaches are like bigger than the program. They know everything that happens in their program. And like you said, I just don't think that can necessarily be true on a college football campus as big as Northwestern, even Michigan, Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, whatever. They're not going to literally know everything that's going on. And for him to get fired, but none of the assistants, it's just kind of like, do you think if you're saying Pat Fitzgerald knew, you're thinking none of the assistants knew anything about this? So that kind of confused me. You're just throwing out everything good that you said Pat Fitzgerald ever did for the program, firing him, and you're saying all the assistants are safe. That's just very strange to me, especially when it's not really proven that he did know. So it's just kind of strange to me. It's almost like they needed a reason to fire him. This happened, so they got rid of him. That's what it almost comes off like to me. The other part too that you were kind of talking about, I've kind of mentioned before. I know we kind of joke about, I don't really like Tom Izzo, that kind of stuff. I'm a very big Jim Harbaugh fan, Juwan Howard, but I also don't put these college coaches up on pedestals like a lot of people do. I don't know these people personally. I don't know what they do know. And I don't put anything past any of these people. If Pat Fitzgerald knew this stuff was happening and allowed it, I would say, yep, doesn't surprise me. Sometimes I feel like I'm a cynic because I basically think, it's kind of sad, but I basically think everyone to an extent is shitty. You always hear like people say there's good in everyone. I don't think that's true. I don't think there is good in everyone. I think a lot of people are good, but I think a lot of people are not good. And maybe some of these head coaches, maybe Bo Schembechler knew some of that stuff that was going on with Michigan and let it slide. Maybe some of the people at Michigan State knew what was going on with Larry Nassar and that whole situation, and they let it slide. And if it's that kind of situation, then yeah, Pat Fitzgerald deserved to be fired, at least in my opinion. But when I saw people like Danny Cannell was one, and I saw some other people come out and be like, Pat Fitzgerald he's been a moral high ground, run a clean program his whole career. I've interacted with him a few times. There's nothing but good things to say about him, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you need to get off your high horse, because even if you've just interviewed him a couple times, or you're going off of the few players that said like Pat Fitzgerald, great player or great coach, that doesn't mean that this person is flawless. Back to the Tom Izzo thing. I understand how highly regarded he is with Michigan State fans and everything like that. I would not be shocked if he knows of stuff and covered up some stuff that his players did to make sure they could be on the basketball court. I can't prove that, but it would not surprise me at all if Tom Izzo has done some things to,
I don't think it would surprise you about any coach.
Really. But that's my point. Jim Harbaugh, whoever, Bo Schembechler, whoever it is, no one is perfect. That's what my point. I don't put anything past anyone. my bigger point is it's kind of weird that Pat Fitzgerald got fired. The rest of the assistants stayed, and I'm on 100% with you. Hazing has no place in any situation.
Yeah, I think we can all agree on that. I mean, Jared jokingly kind of said it's my generation. Hell, it goes back way before my generation.
Yeah.
I mean, it all goes back. It's frat stuff. It's frat boy stuff, man. That's where the hazing's all from, and it's just continued on. It's ridiculous. I can't believe
it. Probably like military stuff too. Probably.
Yes, yes. It's just totally uncalled for, and whether Fitzgerald knew or didn't know, I have no idea. I think more facts will come out, especially if he goes to civil court and wins his case, because I think he probably has a good case. Matt, you said it. It was the first thing that came to my mind when I heard just Fitzgerald, no assistants, no players that I'm aware of at this point have been kicked off the team. I mean, it was very strange. The president says, well, we're going to give you a 2-week suspension. And then all of a sudden the shit hit the fan. You got to give some credit to the Northwestern University journalist there that really broke the story and opened it wide open. It came from the start of it came from a disgruntled ex-player that had transferred out of the program, said, here's what's going on. It always happens that way. I tend to think whether Fitzgerald really knew the extent of it, these guys are CEOs, and I don't know how many of these head coaches are truly, micromanagers into every detail. They manage their assistant coaches. It's just like a head of a business. They let their coaches pretty much run things, and that's the part that just really bothers me, because damn well assistant coaches knew something was going on, whether Fitzgerald really did or didn't, and then they still have their jobs. It just blows my mind.
I almost think two different ways. If one, why are players not being, named in this thing? If this happened, figure out who the hell these kids are, and they're off the team. Again, they're not any good. Kick them off. You're not losing out on Julio Jones out there on the perimeter, man. It's some scrub-a-dub who clearly has some screws loose doing this dumbass hazing. Kick them off. Secondly, Fitzgerald, I've always liked him, but when you go 1-11 and your big thing is how you're always been this, moral compass for all of college football to follow, doing it right, doing it clean. I don't care if you knew. I don't care if you didn't. This just shows how rotten your culture really was, and it was all a mirage. I mean, you went 1-11 for a reason. I don't care if you have, Ted's 0-9. The last joke I'm saying about Ted. Ted's 0-9, 1972 junior year football team out there. You're going to win us some games if you have a good culture. I don't care how talented they are. So that just showed me, dude, I don't feel bad for Fitzgerald. Get him out. Probably was going to be fired after this year anyway. They probably weren't going to perform. It's just sad if he really had nothing to do with it, because, again, I point to these players. They are men. These are upperclassmen. They are 21. They can do anything they want in the United States legally. It's got to come down to them at some point. Mm-hmm. Just because they're in college, man, who gives a shit?
That's kind of what I've always – that's what I've definitely always thought with the hazing thing. For sure, you think about, maybe being a parent. If your kids are doing something crazy and you're supposed to be disciplining your kids or whatever, some responsibility falls on you, of course. But it is the kid's responsibility to make those choices, So kind of the same in a football locker room. The coach is supposed to instill a culture. This is right. This is wrong. But especially when you're dealing with 18 to 23, 24-year-old kids, they're adults. Like you just said, Jared, they're adults. They're going to make their own decisions. And for there not to be one kid in that locker room to stand up and be like, all right, hey guys, this isn't cool. Like you got to stop this. Or maybe if they didn't want to stand up to the players, they didn't feel comfortable with that, didn't go to an assistant and say, hey, I don't want to, speak up to the players, but this stuff is going on. I think we need to do something to stop it, for there not to be, maybe that did happen, I don't know. Maybe that did happen, but for that kind of stuff to not go on to stop it, maybe that goes back to what you're saying, Jared. Maybe they didn't have that culture that everyone thought Northwestern did or whatever. So I'm with you, though. I mean, I say it even with the play on the field. I understand the coaches are going to catch a lot of the flack, but I've always said, you guys have heard me say that it falls on the players sometimes. Yeah, Juwan Howard is coaching those players. Jim Harbaugh is coaching those players. but the players got to be the ones out there executing and performing. Kind of the same with this situation. The players got to make better decisions. So for Pat Fitzgerald to lose his job, okay, maybe he deserved it. But yeah, why haven't we heard any of these players? They're adults. They can be tried as adults, you know? Why have we not heard any of these names and been like, get out of here? If you're the ones doing the hazing, get out.
In my dream scenario, when Fitzgerald got the call that he was fired, he called a team meeting, rallied the team around him in a circle, tears in his eyes, looked left, looked right. I taught you guys nothing. If you didn't know, I taught you guys learned nothing from me. You should be ashamed of yourself. I am out. It's just, again, sometimes you got to look around the room. You can't put it all on your, we all have jobs. Can't blame it all on your boss, man. I mean,
Right.
be your own boss.
Unfortunately, though, that's the way it is in the world. I mean, the boss, they always say the buck stops here. Major League Baseball, they're not firing the players. They're firing the manager. It's just, that's the nature of the beast. Is it fair? No, but that's the way it works.
Yep. Yeah, but I mean, players can get cut. No, I definitely agree with what you're saying, Ted. But, like players can get cut if they're not performing. But, like if a player, let's talk about the Tigers, Javi Baez is under contract. I mean, he's going to stay on the team. But if the Tigers keep sucking, AJ Hinch will get fired before they cut Javi Baez, I mean, I don't think any of us really think that's going to happen, but like that's kind of the scenario you're laying out, Ted.
Well, yeah, Hinch got it from the Astros. None of the Astro players got canned.
Right. Yeah, because he was the one overseeing all that cheating or whatever was going on.
And I'll agree with you, Matt. It makes zero sense how these assistant coaches, if this happened, which they did, it happened. Head coach got fired. How do you just keep this staff? Like what? As if this team's like gearing up for a freaking college football playoff run, dude.
Yeah.
Clear house. Hit the reset button. Go back to square one. Restart this program from scratch. Why in God's green earth did the rest of these guys, who probably are, in closer relationships with these players than the head coach is, who's more like a CEO role in some sense.
Exactly.
How the God's green earth do they keep their job? They're probably more guilty than anyone. It just makes the story at from square one where he got suspended for 2 weeks. And then wouldn't you know it, if you weren't willing to face the backlash of when this went live, which it was going to, then this president should almost be fired too. Like how he botched this scenario. Everything, it was botched at every turn, from the players in the locker room to Fitzgerald to the president to these assistant coaches somehow keeping their job. It's just been a masterclass on effing something up.
Amen.